Deko Pak Yus kayaknya udah mau masuk.
Namanya kita cari.
Sudah masuk, mohon diproses gitu katanya. Gak tahu namanya. Pak Yusianto di situ gak ada.
Tidak ada.
Namanya siapa, Pak?
Di waiting room-nya nggak ada itu?
Anto itu. Yusianto.
Thank you. Halo.
Halo Pak Kiki.
Ya Mbak, nganu ya aku dibantu aja ya. Okay, good afternoon, all participants and all distinguished speakers. Thank you for joining this online coffee talks. And for this first session, I would like to say thank you to all the participants who already joining the sessions. And this webinar is a collaboration between Department of Product Technology, Universitas Brawijaya, with the ICCRI and the University of Nottingham, UK. I think for the first session, I would like to invite our head of department, Bu Widya, to give an opening speech. To Bu Widya, time is yours.
Thank you, Diki. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome all the participants to Coffee Talks Anti-Stress Coffee, which is organized by our department, the Department of Agricultural Product Technology, Faculty of Agricultural Technology, Universitas Brawijaya, Malang, Indonesia. I'm sorry if you hear another sound in the background. We are fortunate to have the support from two incredible speakers, Dr. Gleb Yakubov from University of Nottingham and Bapak Insinyur Yusianto, the famous Indonesian coffee expert from the Indonesian Coffee and Cocoa Research Institute. Thank you so much for your kindness to give us your time to share your knowledge and your expertise with us. Also, many thanks to the committee from our department and faculty who had devoted their valuable time for organizing this event. As the head of this department, please allow me to introduce my department. This department has two undergraduate study programs, food science and technology, and biotechnology. We also have master and doctoral degree program for everyone who is willing to pursue their further study. We have 6 laboratories to support our activity, where we develop science and technology to process agricultural product into a variety of food and non-food product. We have collaboration national and international levels, and we conduct several training and on food production and related topics. Coffee actually is one of our interests, and we have been involved in coffee research and studies in the past few years. But actually, we not only research about coffee. As you see in the slide, we do other commodities such as tea, cocoa, horticulture, and local and traditional food product. This is why we invite many institutions, including University of Nottingham, the Indonesian Coffee and Cocoa Research Institute, and also everyone here who attends this event to collaborate with us on research, community services, and other meaningful activities. Okay, I don't want to waste your time listening my long speech. Please prepare a cup of coffee on your table while enjoying these coffee talks. Thank you again, everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bu Widya, for your an excellent speech. Before we start, I think I just would like to explain to all of the participants that our session will be conducted bilingual. so we can communicate in other English or in Bahasa Indonesia. So please relax and enjoy our discussions. So don't worry if you are, I mean, that at the end of the session of the talk, when you like to ask the question, it's feel free to speak up, and you can ask the question in both Bahasa or in English as you wish. Okay, so I think for the first session, I would like to invite Dr. Gleb Yakubov. Dr. Gleb, are you ready for the talk?
Yes. Hello,
Okay.
everyone. Absolutely.
Okay, so Dr. Gleb Yakubov is an assistant professor in food composites, Faculty of Science at the University of Nottingham, UK. And his expertise is mostly working on the physical approach of understanding the oral process. I think, Dr. Gleb, you can start your sessions. Time is yours.
Okay, excellent. Kiki and Ididri, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity and inviting to participate in this fantastic webinar. I should say that Kiki and I, we know each other for quite a long time now. We both were at some point in our life at the University of Queensland in Australia. So it's very nice to see the continuation of this collaboration. So I will start sharing the screen, and hopefully, Kiki, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see. Yes, excellent.
Right, just making sure. So I have so the slides could be busy at times, so I invite you to look at them as a pure visual material and just try to follow my narrative, which I will try to simplify as much as possible. For the reason is that I try to pack a lot of information in a relatively short time, just because different things may resonate with different people. And for that reason, I thought that it would be good for different people to recognize the potential synergies with my group and my work. And for that reason, it would be really fantastic to have this interaction after the formal session adjourns. So this is just to introduce University of Nottingham. Kiki, can you please let me know that you can hear me well?
Yes. We can.
Brilliant.
Yes, we can accept your sounds quite well.
Fantastic. So it's one of the Russell Group universities in the UK, and we have three campuses. Main one in the UK, and we also have a campus in China, in Ningbo, and also in Malaysia, near Kuala Lumpur. So we have about one point about 18,000 people that are supported by the university activities, and we are one of the leading research-intensive universities in the UK. In our team, which is the division of the School of Biosciences, we have a number of different transdisciplinary research activities going on. So manufacturing, we're very strong on the food processing. We have a strong background in the systems biology approach, and we have a very strong nutritional component. We also developing the consumer behavior insights, and we have a sensory science center to support it, as well as we are increasingly engaging into digital space and collaborating with the computer science to advance the interface between the sensory science and the digital aspects, as well as the social and environmental aspect, which is increasingly important to consider, as well as the sustainability and circular economy. So sustainability and circular economy and food waste valorization is one of the key foci points of our school. And in terms of the facilities that we have a number of physical characterization facilities, like, for example, rheological measurements, friction measurements, analytical ultracentrifugation. We also have a fantastic MRI, magnetic resonant imaging facilities, as well as X-ray and sensory science and flavor science group, which have a very strong track record in the analysis and characterization of flavor release, including these biomimetic type when you measure the retronasal delivery of flavors. And we're also engaging with industry, and we at every step of the supply chain. So we have a number of industrial projects that we are supporting, and this is one of the staples of our engagement with the wider world. Um, in addition to the strength, we beacons of excellence, and these beacons of excellence really build on our core strengths. And one of those, and four of those, are closely related to our work. I mean, we are part of the Future Food Beacon, which is obviously tasked with the transforming the current food production, but we also collaborating with the precision imaging beacon, because the MRI was invented by Sir Peter Mansfield, who got the Nobel Prize for that. And he was based in Nottingham. So Nottingham is really the home of the magnetic resonance imaging, and we explore a number of physiological aspects, especially the brain-gut axis is a very important factor at the moment. We also have a green chemicals beacons, which kind of helps us to support our activities in the waste valorization and transforming the chemicals. And finally, I already mentioned that we actively collaborating with our colleagues in the computer science who have the smart products beacon, which relates to the digital communities, and as well as the advanced manufacturing from the engineering side of things. So this is just a kind of a brief introduction of the key themes in my group. There are four main components. One is we look at the complex dietary fibers and plant cell wall assemblies. It's really the work directed at understanding the functionality of dietary fiber. We also, the second area is we looked at the polysaccharide gels and composites. We're very interested in assembly of polysaccharide. The third area is mucous membranes, is really understanding how the mucous membranes across the body, mainly gastrointestinal tract, but also in the mouth. This is one of our key strengths, understanding this, the functionality of the mucosal membranes and how their barrier function actually depends on the structure of the constituent components and the foods that we eat. And finally, the fourth area, which is last but not least, is the oral processing and saliva product interaction. And that's what I will be talking about today. And it's really about physical insights about the saliva and the oral surfaces interactions that we are really interested in, how they underpin the sensory perception of the product and their functionality. In addition, we have a number of research avenues related to the development of instrumental technique. So our former supervisor with Kiki, Professor Jason Stokes, he was pioneering a number of those techniques, and we've been developing those techniques of when we try to really capture the transformation of food products when they go from something that is a bulk material to something that is a really nanoscale molecular films. And the different parts of the sensory perception can be attributed to the different length scale of the product, so to say. So we were developing those techniques that bridge this gap, starting from conventional sort of rheology that we take to the next level and going all the way to the nanoscale characterization, as well as the surface analysis, absorption analysis, small angle scattering, spectroscopy, especially vibrational spectroscopy, as well as thermal analysis. And there are two techniques related to the AFM, which is one of my core specialities, is the AFM nanomechanics and AFM nanotribology, when you measure mechanical and friction properties of materials at the nanoscale. And we utilize those insights to provide the fundamental underpinnings of what's going on, including when the food products interact with the oral surfaces. And I will show how this technique has been utilized to understand astringency. So now we will go, this was a little bit of an introduction, and now we go into the subject of today's talk, which is about astringency. And you can think about your daily experience when you take a sip of tea or green tea or black tea or wine, and your mouth dries up with the feelings of the roughness and pucker. There are a lot of fruits like persimmons that can be quite astringent. So these are components that are involved in this is tannins. But it's not only the tannins that are responsible for the sensation of astringency. This could be organic acids, and there is a big interaction between the acids and the tannins. And I think this interaction between acidity and polyphenols is very important also for coffee, because obviously the balance of the acidity and polyphenols is an important part of the coffee body and flavor. In addition, it could be alcohol, for example, so it's a dehydration agent. So that's another factor that could be included, especially for other markets where alcohol is more common. And then also it's very interesting that it's not only the organic molecules that can cause astringency, but it also a lot of molecules that have a positive charge. So it could be proteins, for example, like lysozyme. Lysozyme is a protein in our body that has some non-specific immune function. It is a positively charged, and if you put it in your mouth, you will perceive the both sweetness and astringent sensation. And this is associated with interaction with salivary protein. In a similar way, chitosan, which is a positively charged and a normal physiological pH polymer, also elicits astringency. And finally, we have other inorganic components like alum and the iron sulfate that could be an additive in food that also causes this astringent sensation due to this positive charge that brings us to the key mechanism of astringency, which is associated with the binding between salivary protein and those components. So we have a really big diversity of polyphenols, which will be our focus for today. So in green tea, we find things like epigallocatechin gallate. So we have these catechins. In red wine, we can have catechins as well as the cyanidins, which are responsible also for the color of the red wine. And a lot of fruits, we have different tannins that could be in different formats, and it's usually the glucoside. So it is a functionalized glucose molecules. So all these components have a very common chemical, this phenolic compound that makes them very active at binding with protein, not necessarily salivary protein. A lot of these molecules would bind to the albumin, egg white, etc. That would result in aggregation. So the binding of polyphenols to salivary proteins has been one of the key mechanism for astringency. It was identified for a long time. Basically, people already in the last 20th century observed that if you mixed proteins with polyphenols, the proteins precipitate. And the mechanism of this was elucidated in, as I said, in the 90s and early 2000s, when the polyphenols really bind the proteins, and then the ones bound, these proteins tend to aggregate. So it is a kind of a two-step process. So you have a protein chain, then it collapses or kind of get condensed due to the binding with polyphenols, and then in that condensed form, it has a high propensity to aggregate. And this aggregation results in this sensation of grittiness because you essentially generate a lot of particles. You also strip a lot of salivary proteins from the a layer in your mouth, and that causes the loss of lubrication. So these insights about the loss of lubrication and creation of these aggregates were kind of the key hypothesis that we had when we started this work about the interaction and the generation of the astringent sensation in terms of the mechanism. So in order to understand this behavior, you don't have to really go very far in terms of the analytical techniques. You don't need anything sophisticated. You can just take saliva, take, for example, a solution of AGCG, you mix them together, and you will see a precipitate. So this is a typical example of how this interaction really occurring. So it's a really prolific binding is essentially a physical binding formation of the hydrogen bond between the salivary proteins and AGCG. So it's a really a very visual illustration of how prolific this interaction is. This interaction being long used as an indicator of the astringency perception. So in wine industry, it's been routinely used to assess the perceived astringency of wines. And I've picked this graph from the work by Kennedy et al. From 2006 that shows the correlation between the astringency perception and the normalized protein precipitation index or salivary protein precipitation index or SPI. And especially this is kind of is useful in the wine industry when you develop the wine and then you blend it, and so you can adjust the blend so that it has a desirable value of astringency perception. However, there are certain severe limitations. First of all, usually this correlation reflects just the concentration of the tannins. It doesn't account for the chemical diversity and this broad spectrum of polyphenols or PF chemistries. It's not accounted in those type of tests. So also what is important is that this correlation may not be valid and may not show up when the polyphenols are incorporated in the food matrix. And also interpersonal differences are not considered. So when you consider interpersonal differences, you will often see that it overshadows any of the instrumental tests, because they are not really capturing what happens in the individual's mouth. And this is very important. So there are developments. So this is the newer work, which is still kind of 8 years old now. So this is the illustration of what can be achieved if you look at the specific salivary proteins, not just the crude saliva or albumin, for example, people used to do this test, but actually look at the binding to specific salivary proteins, especially proline-rich proteins. You can greatly improve the correlation with the astringency perception intensity, but still, if you incorporate the polyphenol compound into the food matrix, in this case is a chocolate compound, you will see that once incorporated in chocolate compound, the astringency perception doesn't really correlate with the precipitation index. So this is SPD, this is the salivary precipitation depletion index, which is a similar measure to the conventional precipitation index, basically suggesting that whilst this method, the salivary precipitation index, can work in some circumstances, in many instances, it is absolutely useless at predicting astringency. So this was our motivation. And actually, the question we want to ask, do we understand saliva and oral salivary film well enough to build a mechanism-based model of astringency? So I think this is the question that we will ask today ourselves. So first of all I will introduce the salivary film and this will be the first theme that we will be talking about, is that saliva always exists in a form of a thin film. And this thin film is rather complex because it has like 3 layers. So this diagram is very interesting. It has this scale on the y-axis, which is called about thickness, and it's a logarithmic scale in the micrometers. So here at the very bottom, you see a nanometer domains, then you have a tens of nanometers, then you have about 100 nanometer, 1 micron, and about 10 micron. And then that's about where the salivary film ends, at about 20 microns. And indeed, this is the value that we've measured with my colleagues in King's College for the salivary film thickness. So saliva exists as a very thin liquid film. That say, this film still behaves as a bulk fluid. In addition to this bulk fluid film, you have this interface between either enamel, which is in the case of teeth, and the salivary pellicle, or for the soft oral surfaces between the epithelial layer and proteinaceous layer. This is form an complex adsorbed layer that comprises of different components, in particular globular or disordered salivary proteins like PRPs and cystatins, as well as mucins, which is denoted by this MUC, and they are glycosylated proteins, and they exist everywhere on the surface. They form these aggregates in the bulk, as well as the support formation of the third and the final layer is the interfacial film at air-liquid interface. So when your mouth is resting, there is a surface film at the air-liquid interface that is forming this elastic interface, which is very important for some of the perceptions and the perception of the resting. I don't know, it's interesting. There is did someone draw the
Something happened? Something?
yeah.
Someone drawing?
Can you see the green lines?
Yes.
I don't know. What are these green lines?
And anyway, yes.
Anyway.
Sorry for this inconvenience. Anyway, you can continue, I think.
All right. So then the salivary film leads to the phenomenon of the oral lubrication, which really has a different components. So one is the component is related to friction between the oral surfaces. So it's really when the film thickness is kind of molecular size. And then you have this film lubrication, which means that you have a fluid film that is stuck between the solid surfaces. This film now is not molecular size. It is about a micrometer or 5 micrometer in thickness. So it is still a very thin film, but this film of fluid is now really of this transition between the macro scale and microscale. And finally, the surface spreading and wetting is very important because it is important for the perception, and it is important for the entrainment of the fluid into the gap between, for example, the tongue and the hard palate, or between the tongue and the teeth surfaces. The thing too, which is important to remember, is that saliva is stimulus responsive. So we all build now towards how do we understand better than just precipitation with salivary proteins. What other factors can influence? And what factors that can influence is what type of saliva we're actually producing in a particular context. So there are 3 sets of salivary glands. There are parotid glands that are stimulated by chewing, and they produce very watery saliva. It's saliva that tend to wet the food matrix. And this saliva has lubricating properties, but not necessarily for friction properties, but not necessarily lubricating properties because of its very thin nature. It doesn't have this elasticity that we know saliva usually has. By contrast, the submandibular sublingual saliva, SMSL saliva, that is produced sublingual by sublingual and submandibular glands, This saliva is really elastic. It has a lot of these large mucin aggregates that form these extensive aggregates that are responsible for the saliva elasticity. And this saliva is primarily stimulated by acidity. So if you have an acidic drink, or you have or fruit, acidic fruit, that will stimulate your submandibular, sublingual, and very elastic saliva. And finally, you have the minor salivary gland that are distributed across the oral surface, including that on the tongue, and it actually a source of immunoglobulins as well. So it's immunoglobulin A primarily. So this is another factor to consider in terms of the responsiveness of the oral cavity and salivary system to the stimulus, to the food that we eat. The theme 3 to remember is that saliva is a multi-component mixture. It contains about 12 major protein classes, and people identify about 2,000 distinct proteins depending on which gland we are considering. And what is important is that these proteins are not there sitting in isolation. These proteins interact with each other. And this synergistic interaction between these proteins, the salivary interactome, as we say, is a very important factor in the saliva performance in terms of the lubrication, in terms of the film formation, and in terms of the coating of oral surfaces. So this is very important to remember. Many different proteins, but also synergistic interactions between these proteins that give saliva its unique set of properties. So finally, this is the theme number 4. This is the final introduction to the oral biology, so to say, and biochemistry, is the mucins is one of the key and distinguishing component of saliva compared to, for example, blood or other fluids that are more dominated by the globular proteins. In saliva, a lot of properties are related to these mucins, these glycoproteins. So they have this protein backbone, and then have a region of the dense glycosylation that is responsible for a highly hydrated nature of these molecules. And they are responsible for this lubricating ability because they can have the ability to trap a lot of water. And the best lubricant we know is water, but the water can be easily squeezed out because it's very thin. So the presence of mucins leads to the retention of water, and therefore water stays in the gap between the surfaces, providing the important functionality. And what is also important is that the mucins, they exist only also on the cell surface. There is a membrane-bound mucins that we increasingly recognize are important for a number of immunological aspects. They're important for the health implications, and they're also very important for the keeping salivary microbiome at bay. So this is another factor that should be considered, is the salivary microbiome, because there are about 900 species of microbes from about 15 different, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but 15 different classes that are normally residing in the mouth as a part of the oral microbiota. So we will start our journey into the wonders of the physical properties of saliva, and then we will see how these physical properties can be influenced by presence of the astringent molecules. And then we will bring this all into a coherent model at the very end. So the first thing is what we know. If we take saliva, it forms these strings. So these strings, people sometimes, is the surface tension? No, this is due to the elasticity, elastic or viscoelastic properties of saliva that we can measure. So this property is related to the presence of this large supramolecular mucin aggregates. And usually this property is very transient. So if you take saliva and you store it, for example, on the bench, there is a proteolytic actions of the enzymes, and there is an aging and aggregation occurring in saliva that results in the quick breakdown of these elastic properties, which are very important for the maintaining mouth hydration and lubrication. And we can see that the elasticity is much more pronounced in the acid-stimulated saliva compared to the mechanically stimulated saliva when you're talking about the whole mouth saliva. And we know that mechanically stimulated saliva is dominated by the parotid secretion. And we know that parotid secretion are very watery. They don't have any measurable degree of elasticity. And I think this is very important to remember, because this property is the transience of this property means that the replenishment of the salivary film becomes increasingly crucial to maintaining the freshness and the normal state of the mouth. Because it is such a fragile properties, as soon as you add astringent component that would bind to salivary protein, the elasticity would go down. So essentially, you go with something that you measure the elastic properties, and then it goes down. And therefore, this measure, although very important for the physiological role of saliva, is very hard to utilize when you use it with to test for astringency and correlating between the astringency perception and an instrumental measure. And for that reason, we've been looking at other techniques, is when you are looking not at the bulk saliva, but at interfacial elasticity of saliva. So usually you measure interfacial tension. But for the protein solution, you can also measure interfacial rheology, measure interfacial elasticity. So this is a different domain. So they coexist, interfacial elasticity and surface tension. They're kind of like two sides of the same things. And one of the molecules that are responsible specifically for the interfacial properties of saliva is stadherin. And there have been some considerable work by the King's College to elucidate the role of stadherin. It also has a specific adsorption characteristic to the tooth enamel. And we also kind of hypothesizing that there is a role of mucins in supporting this interfacial layer. So anyway, if you measure this interfacial layer, you can see that the elastic modulus of this G prime, it strongly depends on the treatment. So what you put it in your mouth. So you put it in your mouth and then you take saliva and then you measure its properties. So you see, for example, if you add citric acid, the acidity will result in the depletion of the film and therefore the reduction in elasticity. And the same happens with the detergent. So that's why some toothpaste, if they contain a lot of SDS, they could be perceived as astringent because of the disruption of this film.
Excuse me,
And now,
Gleb.
yes.
Could you please a little bit speed it up, because I think we a little bit run out of time.
All right. Okay. So
could be 5 minutes to go.
How much do I have?
It's already passed, but you can have 2 or 3 more minutes so that we can start with the Q&A.
Can I have 5 minutes?
Okay, yes, you're right. Yes, you can.
Okay. So just very quickly. So in this case, what we were measuring the astringency perception and correlating it with interfacial properties. And we use two molecules, one which is very astringent, AGCG, and the other molecule which is epicatechin, which is also perceived as astringent. But as you can be comparing the black curves and the green curves, we can't measure any differences between the elasticity generated by pure saliva and that in the presence of epicatechin, whilst the AGCG has a strong interaction with saliva that is associated with the binding and that changes these interfacial properties. The other thing is related to the oral lubrication, which we've been working for a long time, and I'm happy to go in a lot of details in the Q&A section about the oral lubrication. But what is important that we are developing the techniques to measure oral lubrication and to understand how the oral lubrication is linked to the astringency perception. So one of the techniques that we use is a soft contact tribology that enables us to measure the friction of saliva between the compliant hydrophobic surfaces. And what we know is that the saliva is really super lubricating because it decreases the friction compared to water by 100-fold times. And we also know this is just comparable to the friction of the ice skater. So it's a really slippery surface. And what we know is also that the acid stimulated saliva is more lubricating than mechanically stimulated saliva. And so here we can also utilize this technique to probe the difference between the astringency perception and lubrication properties. And we also use this AGCG and EC molecule as both astringent molecules, right? And you have the astringency perception of equibeta molecules that is roughly the same. And we see that the EGCG has a really dramatically increases the friction of saliva. So it really causes the disruption of the salivary lubrication, whilst the epicatechin doesn't produce the same effect. And we have the AFM images to support that the film is there. And finally, we go into the salivary pellicle, where we use the techniques such as quartz crystal microbalance with dissipation and atomic force microscopy. So both techniques are really targeting the understanding of the surface films in terms of their architecture and in terms of their physicochemical properties. And what we found is that the salivary film absorbed on the solid surface is a really multi-component, multi-layered film that is responsive to the different environments. And now we can take these insights that we've generated about the properties of the film and the criteria that it has to satisfy in order to support these lubrication surfaces and utilize in our understanding of what happens with astringent components. And we can combine it with the tribological tools, or we can use it as a standalone model. So in this case, we use AFM to look at the effect of AGCG, which confirms the aggregation by the of AGCG by the of salivary proteins by AGCG. But if we look at the QCM result, we also can see the different scenarios, whether there is a presence of the bulk film or there is an absence of the bulk films. But both scenarios suggest the changes in the properties of the film and the absorbed mass. So it really enables us to test those scenarios, probe the interaction of AGCG with the saliva. Understanding astringency, and although originally it was commonly attributed to the complexation of polyphenols with salivary proteins leading to greasiness and lubrication mouth, through our advances, we developed a new concept, a mechanism of astringency, as well as developed this new instrumental technique that can be much more accurate at predicting astringency and its relation to the sensory perception. So I just would like to thank you for your attention. Thank my collaborators and my team, as well as funding that we receive to do this work. And thank you so much. And thanks everyone for giving the opportunity to present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gleb, for your very excellent presentations. I think I would like to little bit summarize your talk in Bahasa. So I hope that you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. Jadi Dr. Gleb sudah menjelaskan banyak mengenai bagaimana sebenarnya mekanisme astringen itu bisa dikenali oleh otak, sehingga kita salah satunya di produk kopi misalkan kita mengenal itu astringency atau kekesatan ya. Nah, banyak proses yang dilalui untuk bisa kita mengenali apa itu astringency. Kalau kita lihat di sini setidaknya ada 5 mekanisme yang apakah ini terjadi secara simultan, terpisah-pisah, ini masih menjadi perdebatan dan masih terus diteliti. Dan Dr. Gleb juga menjelaskan bagaimana kita bisa mengukur astringency secara fisikal, melalui physical approach, melalui pendekatan reologi, lapis tipis ya, menggunakan tribologi dan seterusnya. Saya kira itu yang bisa saya simpulkan dari pembicaraan panjang lebar yang saya kira sangat teknis dan ini sangat bermanfaat bagi kita supaya kita bisa memahami bahwa sebenarnya apa yang kita ketahui, apa yang kita kenali ketika kita minum kopi, apa yang sensasi yang kita rasakan itu sebenarnya prosesnya tidak sesederhana seperti kita suka atau nggak suka saja gitu. Tapi lebih dari itu mekanisme ketika kita minum kopi ternyata mekanisme yang ada di dalamnya begitu sangat kompleks. I think that's all. Is that any questions for the participants to ask directly to Dr. Gleb? Let me check the chat. To all the participants, I would like to invite you, if you have any questions, you can send directly, or you can just chat, and then I will ask to Gleb. Wait a minute. Okay, I just have one question for you, Gleb. Is that possible that you when we have this 5 mechanism of astringency, what do you think that it is more likely to happen if we are drinking coffee? As we know that when we drink coffee, there's also astringency sensations. But of course, it is not coming from the epigallocatechin, for example, but it's actually coming from the other phenolic compound. So what do you think when
I think
we
it's
discuss this
absolutely.
mechanism with coffee?
Well, first of all, I don't think we know. So it's a short answer because I don't think it has been researched as well as been for the tea and wine. So the tea and wine are the two areas where there is a more work that has been done. So for the coffee, what is important is that depending on the phenolic profile and depending on the binding of the to the salivary proteins and interaction with the C fibers, that would be my guess, because obviously you know that the caffeine in itself is a beta component, right?
Okay,
so
yeah.
Because it is a beta component and it's not astringent on its own, but it can, because of the bitterness of the caffeine, it can stimulate the receptors and they prime the innervation within the oral cavity in order to make it more sensitive to let's say interaction with other phenolic compounds that cause astringency.
Okay.
This is the one possibility. So
Okay.
the other possibility, so this is the cross interaction between the caffeine and other phenolics. And the other thing is the acidity. So there is an interaction between, it's not necessarily caused by the polyphenols, the aggregation. The aggregation can be caused by the acidity as well. So if you have any organic acids in coffee, they can also can disrupt the salivary film in a similar way. It happens with polyphenols.
Okay. There is another questions from. So, what do you think about the astringency? Is that advantage or disadvantages to the coffee itself? Will it be should be maintained, should be preserved, or it should be masking?
Well, I think this is a very good question, because this is kind of down to the consumer preference, right? So,
Yep.
for example, in tea and wine industry, they talk about an optimum astringency, right? Because if there is no astringency, this is not very characteristic of red wine, or it's not very characteristic of green tea. And for that reason, people try to identify the blend things in a certain way that you have certain astringency perception that give the characteristic flavor and characteristic mouthfeel to a beverage. So I would say it can't be said whether it's advantage or a disadvantage. It's something that we need to have an ability to control. So what we need to have is a robust ability to measure astringency and then produce the product that has a consistency astringency rating. So
Okay.
essentially, people need to have a consistent product, and ensuring this consistency, provided that these are natural products and that there is a variations, that's what is important, and that's where instrumental measures are very helpful.
Okay. There is also another question from Babono. Uh, he asked about, is that that the amount of saliva can change the sensations for coffee?
Absolutely. So it's so I have it can change the freshness perception. We've been working on the freshness perception, and there is a correlation between the flow rate, saliva elasticity, which I was talking at the beginning about the string formation. So and the same with any beverage, there is this interaction between the flow rate and physicalities and the sensation.
Okay.
Of the salivary film. So people
Mm.
who, for example, there is a sensation during drinking, but also there is a sensation after you finish the drink. So people with the lower flow rate may experience longer lingering, for example, sensation that they may find unpleasant.
Okay. Okay. I think I can finish your sessions at this moment. Actually, there is a lot of questions, but we run out of time, so that probably if at the end of the session we still have time, we can continue the Q&A
Yes.
sessions. And I think for the next session, I will deliver the chair to Bu Weni. Bu Weni, are you there? Hello? Uh, hello, Bu Weni? Yep.
Hello? Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, I have a problem with the mute.
Yes, you can continue the sessions to use.
Okay,
Time is
thank
yours.
you. Yes, thank you, Pak Kiki. And thanks for a great presentation. I'm glad. I'm really glad. Yeah. Okay. So before starting, maybe it's better to just drink a cup of coffee. Just sip your coffee to make you relax. Well, yeah. I'm continuing Pak Kiki's job for the next session. Please don't be so stressful because our topic today is anti-stress coffee. So hopefully that all of you can just relax, ya. Jadi jangan stres. So this is bilingual. I just mix, ya. Jadi Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris. So now we have Pak Insinyur Yusianto. Pak Yusianto adalah peneliti senior dari Puslit Koka Jember, ya. Jadi beliau ini sudah cukup sangat dikenal di komunitas kopi kalau di Indonesia, dan saya rasa juga kalau komunitas kopi ada yang juga mengikuti online talk ini pasti juga kenal, pasti kenal ya Pak, ya. Jadi beliau ini adalah the first Indonesian Q grader di 2009. Jadi Q grader pertama, kemudian juga disertifikasi secara internasional oleh SCAA, dan beliau adalah national trainer untuk cupping, dan juga juri-juri di berbagai kompetisi kopi nasional.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to give a little bit of English. That he is I would like to acknowledge Pak Yusianto. He is a senior researcher from the Indonesian Coffee and Cocoa Research Institute, and he is the first Indonesian Q grader for coffee in 2009, internationally certified by SCAA, Specialty Coffee Association America, and he is a national trainer for cupping and also judge, the national coffee competition judge. So without further ado, please Pak Yus, the time is yours.
Yeah.
Jadi
Yeah.
silakan Pak. Ini bilingual, we can do 2 languages, and the topic is anti-stress coffee. So no stress.
Be happy.
No stress.
Be happy.
No stress.
Bisa didengarkan?
Okay,
Bisa Pak.
Bisa ya. Ya, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Ini sebentar. Ini masih foto-foto.
Ya. Oke.
Iya. Ya, ini sebelum saya mulai, ini saya kira kita semua ini tahu bahwa kopi itu sebenarnya minuman yang paling populer di dunia.
Ya.
Minuman yang paling disenangi di dunia. Ini. Tapi perlu diketahui bahwa kopi itu sebenarnya bukan asli Indonesia, ya. Bukan asli Jawa. Yang mendatangkan kopi ke Indonesia adalah Belanda. Nah, ini keuntungan dijajah Belanda ini. Keuntungannya apa? Kita mengenal kopi. Nah, itu. Dan ternyata kita semua ini dengan minum kopi ini bertambah ya. Jadi sejak dulu sebenarnya minum kopi itu ya menyenangkan, anti stres. Catatannya tidak boleh terlalu banyak. Ya, gitu. Jadi minum kopi tidak boleh terlalu banyak. Nanti kalau terlalu banyak tambah stres. Tapi kalau pas ini jadi tidak stres gitu. Jadi supaya minum kopi itu tidak stres, satu, kopinya harus bermutu baik, ya. Kemudian tepat takaran, tepat takarannya. Ini contoh supaya kopinya bermutu baik, maka kita semua harus perhatian terhadap mutu kopi. Dan saya itu punya tagline itu, mutu kopi ini tanggung jawab bersama. Tanggung jawab petani, tanggung jawab peneliti, tanggung jawab dosen, tanggung jawab penyuluh, bahkan tanggung jawab sampai kepala negara. Kalau perlu ini, nah, seperti kita tahu bahwa beberapa tahun yang lalu, ini Pak SBY ini membawa kopi luwak ke Australia. Dalam rangka apa? Ya ini mempromosikan kopi kita. Ini contoh kerjasama yang baik untuk menghasilkan mutu kopi yang baik. Nah, ini contoh gerai kopi. Jadi kopi ini banyak sekali jenisnya. Ya. Kalau dari segi bahan baku, kopi itu sebenarnya ada beberapa jenis saja yang komersial. Yang pertama kopi Arabica, jadi yang paling banyak di dunia. Kemudian kopi Robusta, paling banyak di Indonesia sekarang. Kemudian ada lagi kopi Liberica. Nah, 3 jenis kopi ini yang umum. Nah, dan minum kopi itu dari 3 jenis kopi itu, kalau orang Indonesia itu kenalnya kopi ini adalah kopi Robusta. Seperti contoh yang di depan kita ini adalah contoh produk-produk kopi yang sebagian besar adalah kopi Robusta. Ini. Jadi kalau kita ingin kopi Arabica ini sulit sekali. Kopi Arabica ini sebagian besar kita ekspor ke luar negeri. Ya, sebagian besar, sebagian kecil ada di kafe-kafe yang mahal-mahal itu. Ini ya. Nah, ini contoh keadaan kalau kita minum kopi, ya, persiapannya seperti ini, pengujiannya seperti ini. Tadi yang diterangkan oleh Pak Glenn tadi luar biasa itu. Itu secara kimiawinya seperti itu. Tapi itu bisa disederhanakan sebenarnya. Kalau kita cicip itu rasanya sepet, pahit, nah gitu aja, cepat sekali. Nah kopi ini, satu, kopi Arabica itu ciri khasnya, kalau kita mau minum kopi Arabica, itu ciri khasnya adalah manis sama asam. Ciri khasnya apa? Manis, asam. Kita kan jarang mendengar kopi kok rasanya manis dan asam. Nah, karena kita sering minum kopi robusta, kalau kita ditanya kopi robusta, rasa kopi itu apa? Pahit, sepet, kan gitu. Nah, makanya tadi yang diterangkan banyak sekali tentang rasa sepet. Nah, rasa sepet itu kalau di kopi lebih banyak berasal dari komponen kimia asam klorogenat. Nah, asam klorogenat ini adalah ada dan banyak sekali di kopi robusta. Sedang rasa pahit itu banyak berasal dari kafein. Nah, ini tadi sedikit meneruskan tentang penjelasan Bapak Glenn tadi yang luar biasa, ilmiah sekali. Kami bukan meninggalkan ilmiah, tetap ilmiah, tapi yang saya jelaskan di sini praktis. Nah, ini kita semua. Kenapa kita perlu minum kopi? Nah, ini kadang-kadang banyak orang yang tidak mau minum kopi. Nah, kita itu sebenarnya perlu minum kopi. Perlu minum kopi. Yang pertama adalah karena apa? Kebutuhan gizi. Kebutuhan gizi ini, kopi tidak memenuhi kebutuhan gizi, tapi sebagian dari gizi ini bisa diperoleh dari kopi. Kemudian yang kedua, kebutuhan fisiologis tubuh. Yang berikutnya, yang paling kita tuju adalah kenikmatan. Nah, kemudian ada sosialita kopi. Nah, ini adalah kenapa kita minum kopi. Nah, untuk kebutuhan gizi, biasanya kopi itu digunakan sebagai penambah cita rasa. Penambah cita rasa. Yang umum adalah untuk penambah cita rasa pada makanan-makanan, biskuit, kue, dan sebagainya yang rasa kopi, permen kopi, ya kan? Kemudian ada lagi juga kopi susu. Nah, kopi susu ini sekarang paling populer, ya, yang disebut sebagai kopi latte. Nah, ini contoh. Saking ini membudaya tempat kita, ini Bapak, kopi susu ini penyajiannya pun ada seninya. Ada lombanya, nah, sehingga orang belum diminum saja sudah senang, ya toh? Melihat kopi seperti ini mau minum tidak jadi, karena lihat itu aja stresnya sudah hilang, ya. Stresnya sudah hilang, lihat bunga tulip, ada nanti itu ada yang berbentuk swan dan sebagainya. Ini bagaimana kita ini minum kopi dengan susu. Ini biasanya remaja-remaja ini. Kalau orang tua biasanya tidak pakai susu. Nah, ini contoh-contoh komponen kimia pada kopi, terutama kafein yang paling berfungsi sebagai penghilang rasa stres. Nanti saya terangkan di belakang. Ini asam klorogenat tadi yang saya katakan, yang banyak diterangkan oleh Bapak yang pendahulu kita tadi, yang rasanya sepet. Kalau di ya seperti yang tadi, tapi kalau yang di kopi itu berasal dari komponen asam klorogenat. Ini rasanya sepet. Dan asam klorogenat ini sayangnya pada saat proses penyangrai kopi ini turun drastis, ya. Turun drastis. Mas bisa dengarkan, Bu? Masih bisa?
Bisa. Ya, Pak, bisa.
Ah, ya, alhamdulillah.
Oke.
Ya, ini contoh asam klorogenat. Ini turun dari 10% menjadi 3,8%. Untuk robusta, untuk arabica 6,5%, jadi 2,5% pada saat proses penyangraian. Maka asam klorogenat ini banyak digunakan sekarang untuk apa? Peluru atau untuk diet biasanya. Sehingga banyak sekarang produksi kopi namanya green coffee atau kopi hijau. Nah, tapi sayangnya kopi hijau itu ini menggiling kopi yang masih mentah ini lebih sulit daripada menggiling kopi pada saat sudah matang. Kemudian komponen yang paling penting yang banyak sekali mempengaruhi fisiologi tubuh kita adalah kafein. Kafein ini yang paling banyak termasuk alkaloid yang paling banyak dikonsumsi oleh manusia. Ini adalah kafein. Bahkan kafein ini ditemukan bukan hanya di kopi, di teh pun ditemukan, ya. Bahkan diekstrak, bahkan dibuat senyawa, dibuat di laboratorium, kemudian tambahkan pada minuman seperti Coca-Cola dan sebagainya adalah kafein. Ini kafein ini berfungsi sebagai meningkatkan ini apa namanya denyut nadi jantung. Biasanya orang minum kopi itu denyut nadinya bertambah. Setelah bertambah, maka darah ini beredar dalam tubuh lebih cepat, maka mata kita lebih melek, ya. Kemudian semangat kita lebih baik, ya. Kemudian bahkan kalau seorang atlet 1 jam sebelumnya minum kopi, ini penampilannya bisa lebih baik. Bahkan kafein juga hasil penelitian di beberapa negara maju, karena memang penelitian tentang kopi ini untuk masalah kesehatan lebih banyak dilakukan di negara-negara maju, bahwa kopi ini juga bisa menghilangkan depresi. Nah, tapi tentu tidak boleh terlalu banyak. Saya menyarankan bahwa kalau minum kopi tidak lebih dari 3 cangkir. Tapi kalau orang barat kadang-kadang malam ngopi, pagi ngopi, siang ngopi, sore ngopi, sehingga dia membatasi 4-5 cangkir kopi, itu baik untuk menghilangkan stres, ya, menghilangkan stres. Maka kita semua kalau pagi-pagi kelihatan suntuk, lebih baik minum kopi. Insya Allah hilang stresnya. Nah, ini adalah kafein ini memang kalau ingin anaknya pinter, maka banyak-banyak minum kopi. Maksudnya dibiasakan minum kopi, ya. Kalau ingin anaknya pinter, biasakan minum kopi sejak kecil. Bahkan saya punya tebakan, kita dijajah oleh Belanda itu karena kita belum minum kopi, sedangkan Belandanya sudah minum kopi. Nah, itu seperti itu. Nah, tapi setelah kita minum kopi, gantian dong. Nah, kopinya ditinggal di sini, Belandanya kita usir pulang. Nah, makanya jangan sungkan-sungkan memberi minum kopi kepada anak-anak kita. Ya. Bahkan ini kalau di desa-desa sudah ada ya, minum kopi 1 sendok makan itu untuk anak-anak mencegah dari penyakit mencegah step Pak. Ya, itu sudah umum. Tapi kadang-kadang kopi itu warnanya hitam, kadang-kadang itu sebenarnya nggak asli hitam ya. Hitam itu sebenarnya kesalahan di dalam penyangrai kopi. Mestinya nyangrai kopi itu sampai mateng, bukan sampai hitam. Nah, cuman matangnya itu memang coklat gelap. Ini nih contoh-contoh bahwa kafein ini berpengaruh kepada diri kita, kepada jantung kita. Maka kadang-kadang orang sudah kecanduan kopi, tapi jantungnya sudah lemah. Nah, ini ada namanya kopi di kafein nasi. Ya, ini supaya minum kopinya tetap bisa, tapi jantungnya tetap bekerja dengan sebaik-baiknya. Ini kalau kita ya orang Jawa ini sering memakai kopi namanya kopi jagung, ya. Kadang kopi jitu, kopi siji jagonge pitu. Minum kopi karo sarapan. Ini masalah dekafeinasi itu saya kalau menyarankan kita sebaiknya tidak menggunakan proses dekafeinasi pada kopi. Karena apa? Nanti rasanya hilang. Nah, sehingga efek dari penyegarannya hilang, efek anti stresnya juga hilang. Ini. Kemudian yang berikutnya, minum kopi mosok mikir kafein dorek. Maka minum kopi kita, bagaimana kopi ini kita nikmati, ya, kita nikmati. Maka kopi itu disajikan dengan berbagai cara. Nah, banyak lombanya juga untuk menyajikan kopi, walaupun sekedar minum kopi. Kalau ingin kopi pahit, itu ada espresso, ada mesinnya, atau ada ibrik Turki. Ya, itu kopinya direbus dulu. Kalau zaman dulu kadang-kadang orang Jawa itu menyajikan kopi dengan cara direbus. Kalau di Aceh dengan cara disaring. Nah, menghasilkan kopi yang pahit dan kuat. Ini kuat yang luar biasa, nyetek. Kalau istilahnya itu nyetek. Ya. Kemudian ada di Jogja itu kopi itu nasgidel, panas, legi, kental. Nah, itu. Jadi antara kopi dan gula itu kalau di Pulau Jawa ini merupakan kayak suami istri sudah. saya sudah survei di Jawa Tengah sama Jawa Timur, itu 99,9% itu minum kopi dengan gula. Yang 0,1% itu tidak pakai gula, itu ternyata cuma beberapa orang. Itu adalah penguji cita rasa saja. Nah, seperti saya dan beberapa teman itu. Itu pun minum kopi tanpa gula itu kalau pas nguji tok. Tapi kalau pas minum betulan, ya pakai gula. Nah, ini jadi ini kopi ini kalau orang minum gula saja dilarutkan kan tidak enak, perlu tambah kopinya sehingga lebih membuat matanya melek, pikirannya segar. Kemudian kopi susu itu ada namanya cappuccino. Cappuccino ini kita bisa beli di pasar-pasar, bahkan sudah diproduksi secara massal di pabrik-pabrik. Kemudian latte, kalau latte itu hanya diproduksi di kafe-kafe dan kopi-kopi lainnya. Kopi lainnya termasuk saya sarankan kopi jahe yang sekarang ini jahe ini juga berfungsi sebagai penambah stamina ya, kemudian juga sebagai pencegah dari flu, tentunya pencegah dari penyakit-penyakit akibat virus corona. Insya Allah belum dicoba. Nah, ini contoh pemanenan kopi di kita. Ini kopinya supaya bagus harus dipanen merah ya, jangan hijau saja gitu ya. Ini kalau bisa merah seperti gini. Ini kalau di Indonesia yang panen merah ini baru 10%. Sebagian besar panen kopi itu panen campuran. Karena apa? Karena memang di Indonesia itu masih belum menikmati kopi. Yang ada minum kopi matanya supaya melek. Itu yang paling banyak, Nah, ini contoh-contoh panen kopi zaman dulu kala. Zaman dulu ini yang foto hitam ini zaman dulu. Zaman dulu ini masih kebun Belanda tok yang punya. Orang-orang Indonesia belum punya. Nah, yang foto-foto berwarna ini sudah dimiliki oleh perkebunan rakyat. Dan alhamdulillah sekarang ini 90% kebun kopi ini sudah milik rakyat. Tapi mohon maaf sekarang ini petani-petani sedang stres juga. Soalnya harga kopi turun sekarang. Goro-goro ini pandemi ini. Ya ini kalau ditinjau dari segi tadi cita rasa tentang astringensi ya. Astringensi kalau menurut Bapak Glenn tadi, astringensi itu kalau di kopi terjadi hanya pada kopi robusta. Kopi arabica itu ada, itu hanya kalau pemetikannya itu warna hijau. Nah, kalau enggak hijau enggak terjadi astringensi. Dan astringensi itu di kopi tidak terlalu dipertimbangkan. Yang kita pertimbangkan ini body sama acidity. Body itu kekenalan rasa, acidity terutama untuk kopi arabica itu ada acidity. Kemudian notes ini catatan, terutama untuk arabica ini. Kalau arabica ini biasanya ada kopi sekarang di Indonesia itu ada kopi namanya kopi specialty. Kopi specialty itu kopi yang berada di suatu daerah kemudian mendapat sertifikat namanya indikasi geografis. Maka ada notes-nya ini. Nah, ini yang paling penting lagi adalah bahwa kopi ini membuat kita ceria karena dengan kopi ini ternyata kita ini bisa berhubungan secara enak dengan orang lain. Ini yang kita sebut dengan sosialita kopi. Ini kopi mengakrabkan hubungan keluarga, acara keluarga. Kalau nggak ada kopi, nggak akrab. Nah, ya toh? Kopi mengakrabkan hubungan antar teman, terutama di Poslit Kopi Kakao Indonesia ini, kita ini di sebelah sana ada restorannya, ada warungnya, ada kafenya. Nah, kalau kita pas lagi istirahat, kita ke sana minum-minum kopi bareng. Kemudian mencairkan hubungan yang beku, menemani permainan-permainan kita. Ini kadang-kadang, tapi kopi tadi ya, karena minum kopi itu biasanya agak lama duduknya. Saya itu pernah ke warung. Warungnya itu ternyata tidak mau menyediakan kopi. Kenapa? Menurut dia itu orang kalau sudah di warung kopi itu tidak pergi-pergi katanya. Jadi belinya kopi 1 gelas, tapi tidak pergi. Maka dia tidak mau menyediakan kopi, maunya itu es saja. Nah, ini jadi makanya kalau kita jalan-jalan dari satu kota ke kota yang lain, kemudian kita lihat suatu warung yang di sana banyak sekali sepeda motor yang parkir, itu tandanya warung kopi. Ya, karena apa? Ya, di situ enak. Itu tempat kita bisa mengutarakan hati kita. Gitu
Tempat
ya.
nongkrong ya Pak Yus ya.
Iya, bukan nongkrong, lungguh. Jadi kalau sudah masuk warung kopi itu suasananya itu enak gitu ya. Di sana guyon, di sini guyon, di sini senyum-senyum. Bahkan di warung kopi sekarang harus ada wifi. Wifi gratis harus ada. Kalau tidak ada wifi gratis, biasanya warung kopi jadi sepi. Nah, jadi di situ bisa mengerjakan skripsi, bisa mengerjakan apa saja. Mengerjakan skripsi 8 jam, beri kopinya cuma 1 gelas. Nah, ini maka kita
Yang stres yang jual.
ya yang jual harus kreatif. Saya sering memberi tips supaya kreatif. Ini contoh seperti ini. Nah, ini kan anak-anak. Nah, kalau ini tempat duduknya kan terbatas. Kalau terlalu lama ya ditawari lagi. Minum kopi lagi. Ini ada menu baru. Nah, begitu. Ini contoh-contoh anak-anak muda. Anak muda juga harus dilatih senang kopi. Anak muda senang-senang itu sudah biasa. Nah, ini orang tua. Orang tua juga minum kopi. Kalau dulu zaman Belanda ini yang minum kopi cuma orang-orang Belandanya sambil pacaran. Nah, tapi orang Jawanya cuma nabuh kelenengan. Istilahnya sekarang jadi obatnya wong londo pacaran itu. Nah, tapi zaman sekarang enggak. Ya, yang tua, yang ubanan, nah ini minum kopi. Nah, ini. Jadi nggak stres semua. Jadi sambil guyu ini coba kalau yang minum kopi itu semuanya senyum-senyum. Nih Pak Bungaran Sarage ini malah ini Pak Bungaran Sarage waktu dulu masih menjabat, saya potret ini. Nah, ini contoh lagi. Ini Mbak Tuweknya juga minum kopi. Coba lihat sebelah kiri. Nah, ini. Kemudian ini kopinya tanpa susu lagi ya. Ini. Nah, ini kalau di Kendurinan harus pakai kopi. Tanpa kopi senyumnya kurang, aduhai. Nah, ini coba makan bakso juga ada kopinya. Nah, ini di Aceh ini. Ini warungnya warung kopi tapi isinya bukan hanya kopi. Bakso, mie ada. Ini yang sebelah sini ada lambang ini di Kopi Solong. Kopi Solong ini di Aceh, Banda Aceh. Nah, ini salah satu penggerak kopi Indonesia yang sebelah kiri ini adalah Pak Pranoto Sunarto. Ini adalah penggerak kopi Indonesia, dulu salah satu GM-nya Excelso, kemudian mandiri, kemudian jadi salah satu ketua Asosiasi Eksportir Kopi Indonesia. Ya, ini Pak Sunarto. Tengah ini senior saya, namanya Pak Cahya Ismayadi. Ini beliau sudah purna tugas, tapi karena cintanya kepada kopi, beliau masih sering ke kantor ikut uji cita rasa kopi. Yang sebelahnya ini orang PTPN 12, namanya Pak Budi Polii, juga sudah purna tugas, tapi masih sering jadi juri kopi. Yang sebelah kanan yang bengok ke sana ini orang Brazil ini. Orang Brazil pemilik Real Coffee, perusahaan kopi instan terbesar di Brazil, dan mereka ekspor kopinya, maksudnya kopi instannya ke Indonesia.
Nah, diekspor ke sini, Pak.
Iya, jadi kita juga impor kopi dari luar ini, impor. Di samping ekspor, kita juga impor. Nah, itu. Jadi itulah kopi ini. Minum kopi mesti senyum, kayak saya sebelah kiri ini. Nah, senyum tadi. Nah, jadi kopi baru nyium kopi saja sudah senang, apalagi sudah minum kopi. Jadi kopi anti stres. Baru dengar namanya kopi saja sudah tersenyum, apalagi sudah minum. Itu ya, saya kira kita perlu mulai kecil melatih anak-anak kita untuk minum kopi supaya anak kita tidak sakit dan supaya petani kopi juga tidak stres, ya toh ada yang beli. Tidak usah mikir diekspor, untuk keperluan dalam negeri saja. Kalau sebagian besar minum kopi kurang kopi kita.
Ya, ya Pak.
Itu Ibu, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, terima kasih. Terima kasih Pak Yusianto. So ini tadi dari Pak Yus ya. Kalau boleh, Pak Yus, kalau boleh saya akan sedikit menyampaikan yang rangkuman sekilas saja berbahasa Inggris. Ini mungkin pada audiens yang Pak Gleb dan mungkin lainnya yang dari luar negeri biar bisa sekilas melihat atau mengetahui informasinya tadi. So, thank you Pak Yustianto. That's a very interesting topic about coffee. And so, I think based on your presentation, you mentioned that drinking coffee is joyful, but remember, don't drink too much. So in Indonesia, we used to have like maybe 3 to 4 cups per day is enough, yeah. And then the other recommendation might be 4 to 5 cups per day, yeah. Jadi itu intinya di sana. Because if you drink too much, you will not get anti-stress, but you get more stress. Yeah, more stress. And then the one that is very important is that a good quality coffee is our responsibility. So that's the responsibility of the people and then the scientists and even the president. So it should be a collaboration between all of the people, from the consumers, from the academicians, scientists, and even other people who are interested in coffee. And then the coffee, the species that are cultivated mostly is the Arabica, and then but it's not only Arabica but also Robusta, and in Indonesia we also have Liberica. So they are the most cultivated coffee. And why do we need to drink coffee? Because first you mentioned that coffee has a nutritional benefit, and then the second one is the physiological benefits such as giving the stimulating effect, maybe from the caffeine, yeah, and then also from other bioactive compounds in coffee for your health. And the next one is about the enjoyment. So drinking coffee, it gives you something pleasant. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yeah, and it has a social function that make you have a better communication, maybe with other people, with your family as well. And then one of the most important bioactives in coffee is the polyphenols, which is chlorogenic acid that you mentioned, contributing to astringency, ya Pak? Okay, so contributing to astringency, and then also has a benefit on the like the people who want to have a diet, yeah, or other purpose, yeah, for this antioxidant properties. And also there is a caffeine, which is a stimulant found in coffee, and not only coffee but tea and other resources as well. And the one that the people can do to reduce the roasting process or other processing during coffee preparation might reduce the chlorogenic acid, but especially roasting will decrease it, maybe around 90% or something. Yeah. So I guess that's the one that I can inform Dr. Gleb and other people or other participants here in English. Ya Pak, saya rasa demikian. And then we can continue the question and answer. So there are lots of questions I saw from the chat. So ada banyak pertanyaan Pak.
Ya.
Berikut Pak, ini kayaknya banyak ini pertanyaannya. Tapi ada yang saya pertama kali ingin saya sampaikan. Ini mereka ada yang menanyakan tadi Pak, sebenarnya kopi itu bikin stres apa bikin fresh Pak?
Fresh. Kopi itu bikin fresh.
Bikin stres begitu.
Begini, pertama yang harus kita ketahui, kopi itu minuman yang sehat bagi orang sehat.
Oh ya.
Nah, minuman sehat bagi orang yang sehat. Kalau orangnya sakit, minum kopi Nah, bisa terjadi sebaliknya, bisa, tapi belum tentu. Nah, oleh sebab itu sebenarnya kopi itu minuman yang sehat bagi orang sehat, bukan bikin stres. Gitu. Tapi banyak dokter yang kadang-kadang memberikan saran jangan minum kopi dulu, gitu. Itu terutama terhadap orang-orang yang tekanan darahnya terlalu tinggi, umpama. Tapi itu masih boleh minum kopi, asal tidak lebih dari katakanlah 2 cangkir per hari. Ya, gitu. Kemudian ada orang yang perutnya sakit mah. Nah, kalau sakit mah jangan minum kopi terlalu banyak dan sebelum minum kopi harus makan dulu. Walaupun makannya hanya sekedar pisang goreng, biskuit gitu sebagai apa? Landasan.
Ada
Karena
makanan
apa?
dulu ya di perut ya, Pak.
Iya, karena
Pecel,
kopi.
Pak, pecel 1 piring.
Tapi ya jangan pecel saja, nasi juga, nasi pecel.
Oh, iya.
Gitu. Nah, kalau pecel tok ya perih. Gitu. Jadi kopi itu bukan bikin stres, tapi menghilangkan stres.
Ya.
Ya,
Ya.
berikutnya ada.
Oke, ya Pak, ini ada pertanyaan berikutnya.
Ya.
Bagaimana sih itu cara mengurangi rasa defect pada kopi pada saat roasting, Pak?
Gini.
Saat roasting itu mungkin ada rasa defect, itu bagaimana cara menguranginya? Bisa enggak, Pak? Itu, Pak?
Oh, begitu. Cara mengurangi defect pada saat roasting, pertama roasternya itu harus dipanaskan dulu. Itu yang pertama. Kemudian yang kedua atur suhu. Atur suhu sesuai dengan tujuannya. Apakah tujuannya kalau memang kopinya itu defect sebelumnya, maka pakailah suhu yang tidak terlalu tinggi sehingga waktunya panjang. Dengan waktunya yang panjang tadi, defect-defect akan keluar berterbangan. Nah, kemudian terakhir pakai suhu agak tinggi sehingga dia itu membentuk cita rasa. Jadi pertama suhu rendah dulu supaya apa? Defect-defectnya keluar. Katakanlah tidak boleh lebih dari 150 derajat Celcius dulu awal. Ya. Kemudian terakhir dinaikkan menjadi 170, 180, dan 190. Gitu. Jadi suhu rendah dulu di awal.
Ya, defect-defectnya itu seperti apa, Pak Yus, kalau boleh tahu itu?
Kalau defect utama pada kopi itu ada defect bawaan. Nah, defect bawaan itu satu berasal dari kebun. Itu biasanya karena serangan hama PBKO. Itu biasanya erti moldy. Jadi erti rasa tanah, kemudian moldy bau jamur. Kemudian ada defect karena pengolahan. Pengolahan sebelum sangrai. Itu biasanya karena pembusukan pada pulpnya. Itu biasanya rasanya stinker. Atau stinker itu paling gampang itu bau seperti bau comberan. Nah, gitu. Itu karena apa? Busuk dulu. Nah, kemudian ada defect lagi pada saat penyimpanan. Kalau penyimpanan itu defect karena jamur biasanya. Kalau sudah defect karena penyimpanan itu jamurnya banyak, itu rasa kopinya hilang, hanya rasa jamur saja yang muncul.
Ya, jamur. Karena rasa jamurnya tadi ya, Pak ya.
Ya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Yus. Ini saya rasa ada pertanyaan selanjutnya yang ingin kami tanyakan, Pak. Itu kalau kopi hijau itu prosesnya gimana ya, Pak, katanya? Bagaimana jaminan higienisnya?
Kopi hijau ya? Kopi hijau maksudnya memproduksi kopi hijau.
Ya, ini beliau tanya kopi hijau itu prosesnya seperti apa? Bagaimana kira-kira higiennya itu? Apakah
kopi hijau ya. Kopi hijau itu biasanya digunakan untuk slimming coffee, untuk kopi pelangsing. Itu tidak boleh begitu datang langsung digiling, tidak boleh. Kopi ini harus dipanaskan dulu sampai suhu kira-kira 100 sampai 110 derajat Celcius supaya airnya menguap. Airnya menguap, tapi asam klorogenetnya tetap ada. Nah, setelah airnya menguap, dia menjadi fragile, jadi menjadi remah. Pada saat digiling, dia mudah pecah. Nah, mudah menjadi bubuk. Nah, itu jadi dipanaskan dulu sampai kira-kira suhu 110 derajat Celcius. Tunggu agak lama sampai airnya kira-kira habis atau tinggal sedikit lah. Kemudian setelah itu digiling. Setelah digiling, maka dia menjadi kopi hijau yang siap diminum untuk pelangsing. Tapi ingat jangan pakai susu sama gula yang banyak, tidak jadi pelangsing nanti.
Langsung gitu. jadinya ya.
Gitu.
Jadi itu memang Pak ya, harus dipanaskan dulu tadi
Ya,
ya, bukan benar-benar
kalau
mentah.
langsung digiling ya namanya langsung digiling, nanti gilingannya biasanya protol karena itu
keras,
seperti
ya.
batu.
Ya. Baik. Baik Pak, ini kami lanjutkan, ada pertanyaan yang selanjutnya.
Ya.
Itu komponen apa itu yang bisa menyebabkan kopi itu bisa punya long lasting, aftertaste-nya yang baik?
Oh, itu.
Jadi kopi yang bagaimana Pak yang dipilih itu agar ininya long lasting gitu, aftertaste-nya itu bagus gitu seperti apa?
Oh, gitu. Ini yang punya long lasting itu biasanya kopi robusta. Kopi robusta itu kan punya bodi lebih kuat ya. Bodi lebih kuat. Kalau kopi arabica itu komponennya lebih banyak, cepat menguap. Makanya kalau kita kita sangrai kopi arabica, baunya sangat enak. Kemudian waktu kita tuang, baunya juga sangat enak. Tapi waktu kita minum, nanti tinggal asamnya sama sedikit rasa kopinya. Tapi kalau robusta itu waktu disangrai tidak sekuat arabica, ya, tidak sekuat arabica. Kemudian pada saat kita seduh juga tidak seharum arabica. Tetapi pada saat diminum dia mantap. Mantap.
Taste-nya lebih kuat gitu ya Pak ya.
Taste-nya lebih panjang, lebih kuat. Makanya kalau ingin wangi,
ya.
Iya. Makanya kalau ingin enak, baunya enak, ya toh long lasting juga harus ada blending antara kopi
itu ya intinya ya Pak.
robusta.
Blend dengan robusta. Tadi itu sarannya yang bertanya.
Untuk selera Indonesia itu kira-kira 80% robusta, 20% maksimal arabica. Nggak boleh lebih dari 20%, nanti asam kopinya. Orang kita nggak senang kopi asam.
Ya, oke, baik Pak. Ya itu ada tipsnya dari Pak Yus ya.
Saya tidak ada rahasia, tak kasih semua.
Ya. Jadi ini ada selanjutnya pertanyaan lainnya Pak.
Ya.
Jadi kalau kopi itu sebenarnya enaknya itu dicampur dengan gula, susu, creamer atau sebenarnya harusnya minumnya kopi tanpa itu Pak. Kalau dicampur itu apakah komponen aktifnya itu justru jadi nggak berfungsi misalnya?
Gitu. Ini minum kopi itu ada baiknya, ada enaknya, kan gitu. Kalau baiknya minum kopi ya tanpa gula, biar apa? Biar berfungsi efeknya secara maksimal. Tapi kalau enaknya ya kopi campur gula, campur susu, campur jahe, maka beda enaknya sama baiknya. Nah, kita itu cenderung enaknya kok. Kalau enaknya ya kopi dicampur dengan susu, kemudian ditambah sedikit gula. Kalau kurang mantap dikasih jahe sedikit. Nah, itu enaknya. Kalau baiknya ya kopi tanpa gula. Kan gitu. Tapi gini, untuk kopi tanpa gula sebaiknya pakai kopi arabica. Karena dia sudah ada rasa manisnya. Tapi kalau kopi robusta, ini orang sulit sekali kalau tanpa gula. Mesti pakai gula walaupun sedikit.
Ya, walaupun sedikit pakai.
Ya, robusta, kalau robusta ya.
Robusta, ya. Kemudian ini Pak ada lagi. Jadi menurut Pak Yusianto itu apakah rasa dari kopi specialty itu indikasi geografis memiliki cita rasa yang beda dengan kopi yang belum termasuk dituliskan sebagai specialty coffee gitu Pak. Bagaimana?
Ini kalau indikasi geografis itu sebenarnya masalah hukum toh. Sebenarnya bukan masalah rasa. Tapi kalau rasanya bisa sama, walaupun katakanlah sama-sama dari Pasuruan gitu ya. Yang satu ditulis indikasi geografis, yang satu enggak, ya bisa sama kalau rasanya. Cuman secara hukum yang punya cita rasa dapat indikasi geografis itu biasanya orangnya itu anggota kelompok MPIG setempat gitu.
Yang lebih diakui maksudnya secara hukum tadi ya Pak ya.
Nah, iya, namanya itu kan ngomong IG, ngomong hukum, bukan ngomong rasa. Memang untuk mendapatkan IG perlu ada cita rasa khusus.
Iya, ada cita rasa khusus. Misalnya di yang apa Pak? Kira-kira kopi Indonesia itu yang terus cita rasanya seperti apa itu kira-kira Pak?
Kopi yang dapat IG awal-awal itu Kintamani, Bali. Itu kopi Arabica. Itu ciri khasnya lemoni. Jadi ada rasa seperti jeruknya. Kemudian berikutnya kopi Bajawa, Flores Bajawa.
Ya.
Flores Bajawa itu mirip dengan kopi Jawa. Jawa itu mirip dengan kopi Jawa. Dapat indikasi geografis juga. Itu rasanya spicy, agak pedes. Pedes-pedes itu. Karena memang proses yang kita rekomendasikan pun proses yang menghasilkan cita rasa agak pedas. Kemudian ada lagi kopi Aceh. Kopi Aceh itu kopi yang diolah berbeda dengan Kintamani maupun Bajawa. Sehingga cita rasanya ada kecenderungan dia itu herbal. Herbal, jadi ada rasa seperti herbal itu apa ya? Kulupan ya. Kemudian juga di sana bodinya kuat. Kemudian juga cokliti.
Coklati. Jadi itu spesifik beberapa anu Pak ya.
Ya, sekarang sudah banyak itu yang dapat indikasi geografis itu. Banyak sekali. Karena memang pemerintah daerah menginginkan. Walaupun tidak beda, ingin dapat indikasi geografis, minta tolong kami dari Pusat Penelitian Kopi Kakao Indonesia. Maka ya kita buatkan, kita tes, kemudian kita ajukan ke Kementerian Haki. Ya. Karena sebenarnya indikasi geografis itu bukan masalah administratif, sebenarnya masalah rasa dan kekasan. Contoh antara kopi Pasuruan, dengan kopi Malang itu sebenarnya hampir sama, kopi Arjuna, Podo Arjuna nih. Tapi kalau sing duit beda itu minta IG beda itu. Nah, kami terpaksa itu juga membuatkan itu ceritanya.
Ya, oke, ya baik. Ya, Pak, ini kira-kira satu pertanyaan lagi ini yang terkait dengan akrilamid, Pak.
Akrilamid itu ya. Akrilamid itu kan muncul pada saat Starbucks diprotes itu ya. Itu begini. Bagi saya sesuatu yang disangrai pada suhu tinggi pasti akan timbul senyawa namanya akrilamid itu. Nah, sejak lama sudah ada itu sebenarnya. Dan ternyata ya orang minum kopi umurnya panjang-panjang. Kalau ingin penelitian lebih lanjut, saya kira perlu penelitian dasar itu, penelitian dasar. Ya. Jadi kalau cangkrainya itu suhu tidak tinggi, nanti rasa kopinya tidak timbul, ya toh. Kalau suhu tinggi, rasa kopinya timbul, akrilamidnya juga ada. Nah, kok jadi perkara meneh cara ngilangnya akrilamid lah, malah larang kok kopi nih.
Iya. Betul, ya. Oke, baik Pak. Terima kasih Pak Yus. Berarti kalau akrilamid tadi memang ranahnya nanti kalau mau mengembangkan yang penelitian, silakan.
Iya, penelitian. Nanti Brawijaya penelitian lah.
Ya, karena ada beberapa cara mungkin ya untuk menghilangkan. Walaupun akrilamid itu sendiri nggak dari penyaringan kopi saja, tapi proses
suhu tinggi.
Dia ada protein dan sebagainya itu bisa menimbulkan akrilamid tadi Pak ya.
Iya.
Ya, buat sate gitu ya.
Ya,
Makanya
sate.
Iya.
Kita paling senang sate.
Sate dan semacamnya. Baik Pak Yusianto. So Dr. Gleb, maybe it's a bit difficult maybe to summarize everything about the what's the answers of all of the questions that we have discussed. I apologize for that, Dr. Gleb. Sorry that
it's all good.
in Indonesia as well. So yeah, but however, you see that Pak Yusianto, he already explained about the endoscopy, and yeah, as what you have written in the chat that you have measured salivary cortisol, yeah, which is a well-known stress marker. So maybe there is something to look at the marker while drinking coffee, maybe how it can decrease or reduce the stress by using the marker that you have mentioned before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess we are talking a lot about Indonesian coffee characteristic because we are an archipelago. We have lots of coffee from all of these islands, and then they had specific characters as well. And what is the defect, or what might cause defect on those coffee flavors, for example, from the farm maybe, and then also from the processing factors and also storage. Yeah. So I guess that's all from Pak Yusianto, Dr. Gleb.
Thank you.
Okay, and then if you want to have some more discussions, we can have a discussion later. And also for all the participants who would like to discuss more or chat more, we might not be able to answer it all, but we will have maybe another opportunity next time, or we can have another communication later on, not in this webinar for this online coffee talk. Ya, saya rasa demikian Pak Yus.
Ya, ya.
Terima kasih.
Sama-sama.
Dan atas ini tadi ya yang sudah sangat menginspirasi kami. You have inspired us and then also open up some maybe opportunity atau ini apa kesempatan atau peluang untuk mungkin penelitian selanjutnya. Demikian Pak ya. Oke. Saya rasa demikian Pak Kiki. Bagaimana Pak Kiki? Saya rasa
I think we can continue directly because we short of time. It's already 15 minutes to 5. I think we can just directly go to Bu Weni presentations shortly.
It won't be long,
and yes, and then I just would like to a little bit summarize with adding more informations.
Yeah,
Time is yours.
Yes, thank you. Maybe we can listen to the music while I'm preparing.
Music.
Good idea.
Yes.
Buka lembaran album kenangan, ku bisikan kata terima kasih. Semangatmu hidup di hatiku, berlipur nara di saat ku terjatuh. Hujan mentari datang silih berganti, ku ingat selalu senyummu, walau kenangan bersama.
Siapa saya juga buat kan mau tanya syuting aku buat kan karena dijawab apa ya cara jawab makanya kan dibaca Pak.
Lakukan setiap malam seberkas cahaya di cakrawala, mencarimu dengan
Apa bisa dilihat screen saya?
Bisa.
Ya, bisa.
Bermain Tuhan. Kecil, yang masuk aja.
Hari nanti ku percaya.
Saya ada sedikit permasalahan dengan tampilan saya. Jadi sebentar lagi akan saya tampilkan lagi. Tampak ya. So I am Weni together with Pak Kiki from the Department of Agricultural Technology, Sensory and Applied Food Science, Brawijaya Sensor Gastronomy Center. We will bring you the beauty of Nusantara coffee, yeah, in this online coffee talk. This will be a short time, but yeah, it's okay. So everyone can see this slide clearly?
Yes, I think we can get it.
Okay. And can you hear me clearly as well?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
So next slide.
Next slide, please.
Yes. This slide, I guess we already know, just like what Pak Yusianto mentioned, that coffee was believed to be originated not from Indonesia, so it's from Ethiopia, and then it was cultivated in Yemen before spreading across the globe. And nowadays, it's produced by more than 70 countries, including Indonesia. Yeah, you can find this in our book, Science Coffee Indonesia, in 2019. So we are one of the largest producer in the world, and we have so many beautiful coffees. Yeah. So we have the coffees across the island from Sabang to Merauke. We have Arabica, Robusta, Liberica. We have some Excelsa as well. And we have many different varieties, clones. And this picture is also from our book. We have several single origins coffee, and surely, as what Pak Yusianto mentioned, they have their specific characteristics. So you can say it's delicious. So it's a pleasant coffee or pleasant taste. And then why it's beautiful, or what causing this beauty? So these different unique characters. It's because of many factors from farm to cup. So it's from genetic factors, and then where they grow, the environment, and then the processing, such as from the green bean until the roasting process, the grinding, and then the preparation and brewing, as well as the serving method. And surely there are people, yes, people, and then technology, and then also culture. They are also involved. We cannot live without them. They make everything enjoyable. The people, technology, the culture. So something that you enjoy, something with pleasant sensation, is coming from also, it's coming actually from your ability to sense it. Yeah, your ability to sense. And there are a few pathways related to this, especially during food consumption, as we call the orthonasal, retronasal, and gustation pathway. So gustation is related to taste, while the ortho and retro are related to flavor perceptions. And that's why we can say the Arabica, like what Pak Yus mentioned, is sweeter, acidic, with maybe more sweet characteristic, maybe honey, caramel, chocolate, fruity, and then floral, yeah, as compared to other coffee species, for example, Robusta. So you can say that this Robusta Lampung has the difference or a different character from the Robusta Kintamani, or Arabica Bali Kintamani has a different character to others. Yeah. So the Highland Robusta, or the coffee that is grown in a different different level or elevation, might have a different characteristic to those growing on the lowland atau dataran rendah. Yeah. So they are the environmental factors that influencing those difference in characteristic of coffee, and it's related to their chemical compounds that forms during the growth of the plants, and also the production of coffee fruits or berries. So yeah, so I have show you that there is also the coffee tester flavor wheel from SCAA that we mentioned. We use you to describe coffee profile, and I guess that's also useful for and every people who want to know the terms of flavors. What is this description of flavor when you are drinking coffee or you are doing cupping? So that's all I can share, and remember that coffee is an artwork, so you can, and I hope that you can respect and appreciate it. And the flavor compounds is just the harmonization of the source of the enjoyment while we are drinking. So please also don't forget to respect and appreciate your not only coffee, but you also need to appreciate your what is it? You need to appreciate your culture and your local value as well. So that's a very important one. So happiness, just keep it simple. And I guess that's the end of my short talk, and I will just pass it to Pak Kiki. So Pak Kiki,
yes,
I guess the time is yours because we have a sort of time. So
sure.
Thank you, Pak Kiki.
Thank you, Bu Weni.
Pak Kiki, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Time of it is yours.
I think we can start. I mean that I just would like to highlight a few things that Bu Weni and Pak Yus already being discussed in the previous sessions. That that our Nusantara coffee, Indonesia, is rich of so many resources, particularly with coffee. And on the fishbone diagram that Bueni previously already being discussed, there are so many things influencing the quality of coffee, and particularly the brewed coffee. And this is one of my publication in terms of the influence of brewing techniques, that the brewing techniques has a big impact on the quality of the perceptions of coffee. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. And then from my previous study, we can see that this is the coffee is coming from the dumped coffee, dumped robusta coffee. If we extract the coffee, if we brew the coffee with different types of brewing techniques such as Kalita wave, Chemex woodneck drip pot, Vietnam drip, and V60, they all resulting at different type of quality coffee. So if you can see here, when we optimize the coffee in terms of the antioxidant activity and its total phenolic content, it shows that the higher water temperature, sorry, the smaller IC50 is actually related with the higher antioxidant activity. Yes, next please. Sorry, I think it's about the network is a little bit slow. That from all of this, if we found that it's about 26 of the 26 of the attributes, 21 out of it, it's actually being affected by the brewing techniques. Is that anyone can listen to my voice?
Yes.
Yep.
Kiki.
Okay. And if we can see here in the PCA and the principal component analysis, that even though we have the same source of coffee, when we extract it with different type of techniques, they have a different if you can see here, they have a different position in the principal component analysis, which means it suggests that those type of coffee has their distinct perception, a distinct sensory attributes. Next, please. So what we can highlight here that if we would like to have an optimum sensory attributes, even though we have only have one a particular coffee with all those at least 5 or 6 different technique, we can get different type of things. Say for example, when we would like to have a more dominant musty aroma with a low bitter taste, then a Vietnam drip or fish 60 can be suggested. Next, please. And then the typical hot brewing is something that we normally know, but the conventional method normally using high temperature and it makes the bitter taste and the volatile compounds is gone. And with using the cold brew method, in which they using low temperature in a long time, we will get having much a richer character with more aromatic and flavor. Next, please. And this is the profile of the coffee, the effect of roasting profile to the pH and the caffeine. As you can see that the caffeine is actually optimum for the medium, and it will goes down if we continues to the dark roasted. Next, please. Yes, so the effect of roasting level and the on the Kintamani Arabica coffee is actually we can see in the table, and obviously that by using the cold brewing technique, we actually can enhance the sweet flavor in which as we know that Arabica Kintamani, it's normally quite famous with its fruity taste. So it actually can be enhanced by the cold method, cold brewing as well. Next, please. Yes. So the highlights for this section is actually that the light roasted coffee tend to intensify the sweetness of Kintamani coffee. Next, please. Now we talk about the influence of brewing water quality. It's also one of my publications. Next, please. What we got now that one of the factor influencing the multisensory perception is actually, particularly for coffee, is the brewing water itself. Next. And what we can see here, previous slide, please. Yes, the different quality of water is actually changing minorly to the sweet aroma, chocolate aroma, as well as the oily mouth coating. So we may think that those type of attribute, it's probably just minor attributes, but somehow if the sweet or the chocolate aroma, it's a something dominant, such as like in Kintamani Arabica, then the quality of water will be very, very important. So it means that we need to consider the water quality to be able to extract the dominant sensation, the dominant attributes of that the coffee. Next, please. And this is the I try to relate the the pH of the water quality with the mineral content. And what we can see here that the highest mineral content will be water number 5, I think, and it's actually the tap water. However, it is not necessarily that the tap water is the best one for the best quality water for brewing the coffee. No, but we know that the the tap water is different between place to place. But fortunately, that the tap water in our city is actually quite good. It's sufficiently good for brewing coffee. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, I think that, yep. And the PCA, please. Next slide. Yes, and if we have this principal component analysis, somehow that citric acid and vinegar taste is actually has a high correlations, and as well as the salty taste and the citric acid taste. The citric acid and vinegar taste could be very rational that they have a quite strong correlations. However, this is it's also important to note that salty taste and citric acid taste is also have a high correlations in this coffee. It may affected by the fact that uh, could be the chemosensors in our taste bud for the salty and the sour taste is actually quite in a close proximity. Okay, next please. So what we can highlight here is actually within the range of 5.5 to 9, the pH of brewing water has no significant effect on taste and the flavor. However, the different brewing water affect the aroma of coffee, especially for the sweet and chocolate aroma, as well as the oily mouthfeel. The ground coffee Robusta tends to have more intense aroma than those of instant coffee and Arabica, except for the sweet and citrus aroma. And ground coffee, of course, has more intense mouthfeel than those of instant coffee. And saliva tends to increase the pH of coffee during the consumptions. I think that's all of my presentation. Thank you, and let's enjoy a cup of coffee. I think that's all of my presentations. Uh, is there any questions? Bu Weni, can you help me as well? Can you be joining me? Okay, I think there are questions from Bapak Arif Yudi Andika. What is the difference of brewing the coffee with mineral water or the tap water? There are different, as I told you, as already provided in the slide. There are a big differences. However, I mean that if we talk about the tap water, it's really depend on the where is the place or where you are living in. So the tap water is cannot be generalized as the same. I think, and then about the roasting temperature to make the cold brew. The best one for the roasting temperature for the cold brew, it is normally what we call it, the medium roasted. Yeah, the medium roasted. Okay, and then the ideal brewing is about 90. Yes, it's right. I mean that from from my studies, my previous studies, it's actually most of the techniques requiring the optimum conditions to get the best treatment for the coffee is actually less than 100. Yes, mostly about 97, 98, and sometimes it's go down to about 94. I think that's several questions that I can answer. I'm sorry for our limitation not to answer all the questions. If you have uh, any questions for the questions, you can contact our department. I think it is already mentioned in our uh, announcement in our email. I think as it's already 10 past 5, I think we already passing the end of the sessions. Thank you for joining us. I don't know whether Bu Weni, can you join us?
Okay, thank you, Pak Kiki.
Yep. Okay.
I think I have a little bit of problem with the technical things here, like the
That's
speaker,
okay.
so
Yep.
I'm using other sources as well.
That's all right.
But I guess this is the end of our online coffee talk today. That's okay, because I guess the time is not allowing us to continue. But thank you so much, Pak Kiki, for your presentation. And we would like to thank everyone for the participations and also the guest speaker. So maybe we can, before we close our event, so the committee, maybe can you just put the slide of the last slide of thank you slide and the music as well, so that I'm not getting stress. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Pak Kiki. I guess I give the time again to you for your final.
I think I would like to thanks. Yes,
I cannot
would like to
clearly listen anything actually, so
yes.
I will give it to you.
Okay, thank you. I think I just would like to say a great thanks to Gleb and to Pak Yus for your participations, for your contributions, your great contribution to this coffee talk. I know that, and I also would like to deliver my great thanks to all of the participants. As we know that when we conducting the webinar, online meeting, online seminar, I think there's also a lot of technical problems, a technical issue that may comes up, but I think we already done what we have done. We do the best we can, and I hope that all of you can enjoy the talks. See you next time in the next sessions. Probably it will be a regular webinar that we would like to conduct. Okay, thank you, Gleb. Thank you, Bu Weni. Thank you, Pak Yus. Yep. Okay, I think we can enjoy our coffee now. Okay, see you. Bye-bye, everyone.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Erat oleh bunda, bahagia itu sederhana, bukan hanya sekedar materi, bisa juga hanya berbentuk mimpi, atau ketika melihat senyummu. Kita menari bersama, kita bernyanyi bersama. Estamos en Guayana,